Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. This is Glenn at Glenn's Bookshelf. Thanks for stopping by. I wanted to give an update on my Dr. November reads as it's getting past the middle of November, and I wanted to talk about a couple of books that I have read this month. I have read two books by John Le Carre. John Le Carre. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right. I read Call for the Dead and The Spy Who Came in from the Cold. And both of these books, fortunately, happen to be books that I already owned, so they fit in with my Read What You Own challenge that I started along with that some other booktubers started and that I decided to join up with starting this month, and which for me means I will not, I don't plan to buy any more books until December 26th, or December the 26th after Christmas. So almost 2 months of trying to hold myself to not buying any more new or used books. But so for Dr. November, I read two John Le Carre books, and I also read Graham Greene's Our Man in Havana. Some booktubers are reading Graham Greene's The Quiet American as part of Dr. November. I read that book in September, for Shorty September, and I have a video talking about that. So for this video, I'm just going to talk about the two John Le Carre books and Our Man in Havana by Graham Greene. With John Le Carre, I think I want to provide a little bit of background as far as, how I came to his writings and how I approached and how I appreciated the books I read. I was a big fan of the 2011 movie called Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is a John Le Carre story. The movie based on one of John Le Carre's well-known books. And it featured Gary Oldman as the George Smiley character, as one of the central characters in the John Le Carre books. And it featured Benedict Cumberbatch, and just sort of a cast of thousands. Mark Strong was in it. Colin Firth was in it. It was a great movie. John Hurt had a very limited but significant role as the character Control, and it was a great movie. I loved it. I've watched it, a number of times. And as I often do, if I really see a movie that I like and I learn that it's based on a book or a series of books, that I immediately go out and buy a bunch of that author's books. And so that's what I did with John Le Carre after I saw that movie, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And unfortunately, I just could not get into his books all that much. I think it had something to do with, if I've seen the movie adaptation or the TV adaptation of a book first and then I read the book, I tend to maybe not like the book as much. If on the other hand, if I've read the book first and then I see the TV or movie adaptation, I don't like the adaptation all that much. So it tends to be whichever median I have encountered the author on the first time, that's my preference. And so I'd gotten a couple of John Le Carre books, two of them being Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and The Spy Who Came in from the Cold, as well as Call for the Dead, and at least one other book. I think it's The Honorable Schoolboy. I'm not too sure. And so back maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago, I read Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and just didn't really like it all that much. I tried to read The Spy Who Came in from the Cold, which is a shorter book, and I don't know if I finished it or and just don't really remember it, or if I DNF'd it. I'm pretty sure I DNF'd it, but and so I didn't really get into or enjoy any of his books. But when Doctor November was announced, and some people mentioned that they were going, some booktubers, in addition to or along with the reading of Graham Greene's The Quiet American, we're going to read The Spy Who Came in from the Cold. So I thought that was a great opportunity to retry that book, and I'm really glad I did. It's a great story. It's based on an agent who um, is in charge of operations kind of in East Berlin at the turn of the 1960s, and one of his agents, one of his contacts, is killed, and so he comes back, or is brought back to England, to Great Britain, by Control and by George Smiley, and is sort of tasked with sort of going back and trying to infiltrate the East German communist intelligence agency as a disaffected British spy. So he is sort of given the task of trying to convince the East Germans, and sort of behind them the Soviet communists, that he has turned, at least for the purposes of getting money. So he offers his he is contacted by the East Germans, and begins to try and infiltrate their network by giving information to them, ostensibly to get paid. So that's sort of the track of the story, and it follows this particular agent, whose name in the book is Alec Lemus. And I don't know why I didn't really care for this book the first time I tried to read it, but I really enjoyed it this time. So whatever the cause, big thumbs up. Really, really enjoyed this book. And after I read that, I thought I would read one of the other books that was already on my shelf, and that was Call for the Dead, which was also kind of a short volume. It's 153 pages, it looks like. And this is a book that is... Call for the Dead is actually John Le Carre's first book, if I'm not mistaken. For some reason, I thought that his first book was The Spy Who Came in from the Cold, but apparently that's his third book. And so Call for the Dead is his first book, and it introduces the George Smiley character, who is one of the lead agents, directors of, I think it's the British Special Services, MI6. And this story concerns the George Smiley character has gotten a tip-off about someone, a British employee in the Foreign Service, who may have some connections to might possibly be a double agent, or an agent of the Soviet Union, because of his past sort of Marxist ties when he was at the university. And so the George Smiley character goes to investigate him, and then later on, or very shortly thereafter, this character is found dead. And the official line is that he committed suicide because the investigation of him just made him stressed out, and he just couldn't handle it. And so he's portrayed as having been having killed himself. And so George Smiley is initially put in a very bad place because it looks like he did something that caused this agent to, or caused this foreign service worker to kill himself, and did he do anything inappropriate to cause that? And so George Smiley ends up kind of investigating this man's story a little bit more, and it's again a very great. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, very much I would consider kind of a slow burn. There's definitely some intrigue and some tension as the book starts, but as you get towards the end, you start to see how all the characters are connected, and it just comes to a really kind of very very appealing, very very strong ending to it. So I'm back on the John Le Carre bandwagon as far as reading his books are concerned. I thought both of these were really really good. And finally, like I said, I read Graham Greene's Our Man in Havana, and I read, like I said, I read The Quiet American back in September, and I kind of liked it. It was I thought it had its good qualities and its maybe some more questionable qualities, but I liked the writing and the setting and the sort of the premise of the book, and that was sort of how I approached Our Man in Havana. It's I just thought the premise of the book was very interesting. Here's the back cover kind of describes it as sort of the main character in the story is a British man who has a vacuum cleaning. He sells vacuum cleaners in Havana, Cuba, in the 1950s, in the late 1950s, and his name is Warm Wold. And he has a daughter, and he's short of money, and he's approached by a British spy based in the Caribbean, whose name is Hawthorne, and he's offered $300 or £300 plus a month to become an agent of the British spy services. And so that's where the title comes from, Our Man in Havana. And this guy Wormwold is not really much of isn't really interested in spying. He really just kind of wants the money. And to keep his job, he files bogus reports based on Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare and dreams up military installations from vacuum cleaner designs, and he sort of creates these sort of bogus agents that he receives money on behalf of, but then just spends himself, for his daughter, and so forth. And it has just, the premise of it just really sort of struck me as pretty amusing, and the book is pretty farcical like that. It's this man, like I said, he creates these fictitious agents or sub-agents, and he's receiving money on their behalf, and then two other assistants come from the spy services to sort of assist him, and so he's like sort of trying to keep this secret from them as well. But then it turns out that somehow, as the back cover says, his these bogus stories he's made up about these so-called agents, these stories start coming disturbingly true. And one of his agents, the name that he affixed to this person, this person ends up being killed. And so it really kind of gets to where it's really puzzling how he's not really collecting any meaningful spy information. He's not really running a real spy service, but kind of his stories start becoming accepted as true by someone, and they start targeting people sort of close to the main character Wormwald, and it was. It's a book that, like I said, is very, very, as it says here on the back cover, it's comical, satirical, atmospheric. It's kind of funny in places. Towards the end, it feels like it takes more. It almost starts to take a little darker turn to where I maybe think of this book as more sort of dark comedy than sort of fun-loving satire. But it's a pretty fascinating book. I enjoyed reading it, and yeah, so I would highly recommend this book as well. And what's kind of interesting thinking about parallels between this Graham Greene book and The Quiet American. There are some similarities in the main character. Both are portrayed as atheistic or at least agnostic, and is not really having a kind of value system, which is sort of odd for Graham Greene, as he was known for, he had converted to Catholicism some years before, some decades before, and he has written books that I think are more, that have religious and faith sort of ideals around the main character. But both of the protagonists in The Quiet American and Our Man in Havana are both sort of these kind of non-religious, non-faith-driven characters who don't have any, or at least appear to not really have any central value system, and then the book sort of ends up being this this character's sort of growth, and how does someone who's sort of trying to keep themselves kind of detached from from religious faith and from larger moralistic thinking, how do they navigate the challenges ahead of them. And in this book, in Our Man in Havana, sort of the religious counterbalance or balance to the main character is the character's daughter, who is 17, and she is sort of portrayed as kind of the faithful Catholic in the family. The other component, the other sort of parallel in the two books is The Quiet American was written in the early 1950s and set in Vietnam, and features a Central American, an American character that's very central to the story, and sort of captures the illusions of the Western world in both the French and the English and the American forces that are trying to shape Southeast Vietnam, and the failures that will ultimately lead to, and as it does in real life decades later, in the late 60s and early 70s. And this book, Our Man in Havana, is very similar to that. It's written in the late 1950s, and it's the background, sort of the context of the story is that this is the time period when the Cuban revolutionaries are sort of agitating largely in the rural areas, the Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, and though neither of those names are mentioned in the book, but there is, the context of the book is the Cuban government is sort of trying to deal with these rebellious forces that are outside the main population areas, and the complications that imposes on the people in the cities and the government as they're trying to hold on to power. So again, written before the Cuban Revolution, but it sort of has certain dimensions in the book kind of I think sort of are very prescient for what ends up happening in the real nation of Cuba. So those were my Dr. November reads, and I have started to reread Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I'm about 30 pages into it. I don't know that I'm going to continue with it. But we'll see. So just have enjoyed Doctor November and enjoyed these three books. And I thank you again for watching, and I will be back with another bookish video soon. Thank you. Bye bye.